Hey, what's up guys? So I'm very excited to be making this video right now all about the Eternals. The Eternals, if you don't know, don't worry, they're a very obscure comic run, even as comics goes, and they should be in the MCU by next year. I believe they will take that November 6th slot, or if not the Eternals, it'll probably be Doctor Strange 2, either or. Doctor Strange 2 is very much due for a sequel, but right now I want to talk about the Eternals. Admittedly, I didn't know too much about the Eternals, honestly. I always knew of them, but I really never delved into them too much. And with the movie coming up, I thought I'd do my homework, and I have been reading the comics over the last couple of months. I'm actually working my way through the first volume 1 run right now. I'm on issue 15 of 19. I've read volume 2, volume 3, and volume 4, and I gotta say, I really love the Eternals now. I think they're super weird, super awesome, and I think they are an amazing addition to the MCU. Like, it's gonna be super badass having them in the MCU. So what I'm gonna try to do for this video is basically give you the gist and the history, the origins of the Eternals, the main characters that you need to know of, the main villains, what each character kind of does, what their power set is, where they come from. I'll talk about the different runs of the comics, and I'll give you my personal recommendation of a run that I definitely would want you guys to check out if you are interested in actually reading about the Eternals. And basically just speculating and theorizing about certain ways they can actually put the Eternals in the MCU, or what I think they actually might do in the movies, what they might adapt from certain storylines, maybe mixed together, and my expectations for this movie. And I'm just very curious to see how these characters would fit in the MCU, especially in the state of the world that the MCU is in right now with the multiverse and all those snaps that are going on Earth. I think it'll be very cool, and I think they can actually bring forth a lot of really awesome characters that we haven't seen before, and what kind of future the MCU Eternals could set up. So first off, the Eternals were created by the legend himself, Jack Kirby, and they debuted in the 70s, 76 through 78. That comic run was about 19 issues, and I'm actually working my way through it right now. I'm reading it online, and it's pretty good. I'm on issue 15 out of 19. The thing about that comic run is that it was canceled, but Roy Thomas actually picked up and kind of resolved a lot of the threads in his Thor series. I believe it's Thor 278 to 301. I haven't personally read that. I'm actually working through it right now. Here's some of the Thor, the Eternal saga. So I just wanted to show you guys these issues just to see what they look like. I think they're just so old. It's just so crazy. There's volume 2 right here. This is issue 12 from volume 2. This came out in the 80s, and honestly, I don't really like this run. I just find it kind of boring, to be honest. But if I had to recommend any runs of the Eternals for anybody that's interested in actually reading Eternals comics besides the first run, the Jack Kirby run, I would definitely go with volume 3 and 4, the mid to late 2000s runs. Volume 3 by Neil Gaiman and volume 4 by Charles Knopf. But if it came down to one comic run, I would definitely go with Neil Gaiman's run. Just look at that art, guys. It's so weird and so ethereal. I love that. There's nothing wrong with Charles Knopf's run. I actually really like this, and this was the first run I actually ever read of the Eternals. But in this case, I would definitely give the upper hand to Neil Gaiman. They're both great runs, and there's great art in both books, but I just personally prefer Neil Gaiman, and I would highly recommend Neil Gaiman's run over any other run, to be honest. So the origins of the Eternals that I'm going to be sharing with you guys are primarily going to be a mix of volume 1, 3, and 4, because each run is kind of different, but I'm just going off of what I think most likely will happen in the movie. So how the Eternals came to be is, well, just as crazy as it's gonna sound. So a million years ago, these big, huge, 1,000-foot tall, giant robot-looking beings came to Earth called the Celestials. Now, if you're familiar with Guardians of the Galaxy, you've seen Celestials before. Nowhere, the severed head of a Celestial, and Eson the Searcher as well. I'm not counting Ego as a Celestial in this video, unfortunately. They made huge, highly sophisticated machines that resemble nanocircuits out of rocks. And it is said, and they are described as big rocks that can do magic, real magic. And they use these big rock machines on proto-humans, and that's how the Eternals came to be, and basically modern day humans with the potential of becoming mutants, and also the Deviants. And in the Neil Gaiman run, the Celestials only created about 100 Eternals. So basically the Eternals are godlike beings, all of them pretty much with insane abilities, increased strength, durability, stamina, pretty much virtually immortal, honestly, although in the Neil Gaiman run, they actually can die. It's just really hard for them them to die, but they can be revived in these things called reactivation chambers. So it's basically like a chamber that whenever you die, you just appear back in there with your full intact consciousness, which is pretty cool. And the Eternals are actually behind a lot of the mythological figures that have been looked to throughout human history, like the Eternal Makari. He's a speedster, and he's actually behind the whole Mercury, the god of speed thing. And also, I believe in the Neil Gaiman run, he was depicted as Osiris, kind of like how Odin, Loki, and Thor are kind of worshipped by the Nords. There's even a deviant named Crow who is kind of like an OG villain of the first and second volumes, and he was depicted as being the devil. So some of the main Eternals that you should know about, first being Icarus. He's kind of the leader of the group of all the Eternals. He's like this blonde, he looks almost like He-Man. He has a pretty cool blue and red suit. His thing is mostly flying, and he can shoot beams out of his eyes. We have Makari again, who is a speedster, and in volume 4 he can actually talk to a Celestial, which he wasn't able to before. And there was one Eternal, Ares, who was actually the only Eternal that was able to talk to a Celestial, and he doesn't like that very much. He actually vaporizes Makari in that run. And then we have Cersei, who is a very carefree, very just go with the flow kind of girl, very promiscuous, but she has really strong atom manipulation, kind of basically like a witch. Like, she's turned dudes into pigs, so that's her main thing. We have Deena, who is the daughter of Zurus, who is the head of the Eternals. He's actually the brother of Mentor, or Alars, the father of Thanos. So the head of the Eternals on Earth is the uncle of Thanos, so just keep that in mind. Zurus's father is Kronos, and admittedly guys, I don't know too much on Kronos right now, as I still haven't gone through the first run of the Eternals, but I will learn more and I will get into that. And Deena is pretty much a crazy strong, super proficient in fighting, just a warrior princess basically is the best way I can describe it, just 10 times more badass. We have Ares, who was actually in the first run worshipped by the Incans. He was called some name with a T I cannot pronounce, and he was the only Eternal then that could talk to the Celestial. So lastly, for the Eternals on Earth, the Eternal Sprite is basically a kid Eternal. So think about being 11 years old for a million years and how terrible that would be. And that's going to come up later, and I'll go more into that. I hear they're kind of gender swapping that, and the new Sprite will actually be called Piper in the MCU debut. So I'm interested on how they're going to work that angle and what they're actually going to do with that. As far as the people that I know are going to be in the movie, I'm counting some other Eternals as well. Thanos is actually an Eternal. He's an Eternal with a deviant gene, and that's why he has, you know, the purple and the furrowed chin. He's like a mutant Eternal deviant. That's why he's so powerful, as we could see when he just takes on everybody like it's nothing pretty much. And the one human character that I would go over is a character called Margot Damien. I believe she's only come out in the first and second runs, but she's basically an archaeologist, I believe. She gets caught up with some deviants and some Eternal and Celestial action, and Icarus has to take her away from some spot. She was going to be trapped, and she just kind of gets intertwined with the Eternals. She's kind of just like the human representative there with the Eternals. So I'd imagine they'd use her in the Eternals movie to kind of just go over how crazy everything that she's seeing really is. Now, as far as villains goes for the Eternals, there's really not many. There are the Deviants, which I'll get into in a little bit, but the main Deviant that I want to talk about, and that was a big antagonist for the first and second one, was Crow. He was a pretty high-ranking Deviant. Then there's Druig, which I hear he is supposed to be the main antagonist for the MCU Eternals movie. He is an Eternal himself. He's actually the cousin of Icarus, and I believe he has some of the same powers. He can fly, and I believe he can cause nightmares. I'm not too sure. I haven't read too much into him, or I just didn't interpret it that well. He's pretty crazy too. He's no joke. There's also other villains like the Horde, Gilgamesh, who was an Eternal, like pretty much a powerhouse but was forgotten, and Kronos, the father of Alars and Zurus. So getting into who the Deviants are, because those are the main antagonists for the Eternals, and they should be popping up in the MCU just as well. So the Celestials made the Deviants, and they're pretty much a group of monstrous, vile beings. Each one of them looks different from the other. They suffer from unstable molecules, and that causes them each to be differently grotesque, but they were very smart, and they ended up taking over the world and kind of enslaving humanity, and the Eternals kind of just were chilling at their base, Olympia, until the Deviants started to mess with them, and then the 100 Eternals started to fight back, and they were pretty much built for fighting, and they were tearing the millions of Deviants up. But it was 1,000,000 versus 100, so it was pretty crazy, and so they called for help from the Celestials, and the Celestials actually gave them the ability to call them, and the Celestials came, and they were like, what are y'all fools doing? ruin, and they pretty much destroyed the majority of the Deviants, and there was only about 1,000 few survivors, and all of their lands sunk to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. And in Volume 1 and 2, that's where their base of operation is. It's called Lemuria, and the Celestials pretty much took them out within days. They tried to fight back, but what is a flea to a space god, guys? That just sounds so cool. I love it. Space gods, I'm so thankful I could say space gods. The Eternals, however, were godlike beings. They resided in Mount Olympia in the first run, in I believe the mountains of Greece, but in Neil Gaiman's run, Mount Olympia, or Olympia, is set in Antarctica. The Eternals are 1,000,000 years old, guys, and they were designed by the Celestials to be the protectors of Earth, which really makes you wonder just where they've been in the MCU and why we haven't seen them. The movie even has been suggested to span throughout human history, so I would really like to see that, how the Eternals kind of weave their way into everything, into human history, and how they came to be from the start to where they are now. And I believe the reason why we haven't seen the Eternals is because they will heavily adapt the story that was in the Volume 3 run from Neil Gaiman, where all the Eternals forgot that they were Eternals. They were implanted with false memories only to have sparks of their past lives in their dreams. So the reason for that is because of the Eternal Sprite, or Piper for the movie. His main power is that of illusion, and basically he's been stuck as an 11-year-old for 1,000,000 years, and he's 100% tired of that, obviously, like anybody would. He doesn't want to be treated like a kid anymore, and he sees all the other adult Eternals doing adult things, and he wants to do those things as well, and he's really confused as to why he was the only Eternal that was made as a kid. So he's just hating his creator and all this stuff, and it's pretty crazy. So basically what happens is Sprite uses his power of illusion to cast an illusion over the leader of the Eternals, Zurus, and the speaker to the Celestials, the Eternal Ares, the one who can speak to Celestials. He casts an illusion to bring them to an unconscious Celestial, and basically they form this thing called the Unimind, which is basically a Megazord for the Eternals. They basically unify into this thing that looks like a big brain, almost similar to that of Ego's brain in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. When they're in that thing called the Unimind, their powers are amplified, they work as one. It's a Megazord basically, but for Eternal, that looks like a brain. And he used the unconscious Celestial to amplify the power of the Unimind and his power of illusion, and he actually was able to change reality, and he changed himself from an Eternal to an actual real human being, a human boy who will grow up to be a man, who will grow up to do adult things like he's wanted to, and be able to die. And he also uses this opportunity to erase and implant false memories into all the Eternals' minds. Zurus actually becomes a homeless person, Makari becomes a doctor, Cersei is just living in New York with one of her friends, and she becomes a party planner. And honestly, it would make sense as to why the Eternals haven't been seen in the MCU, and I would really love to see this adapted into the movie, because when the antagonist of the movie has something, maybe not that they think is good, but something that is 100% understandable and that anybody can get behind, like, oh, like, I understand why that guy did that shit. That's gold right there, guys. And I think that would be a really good adaptation. It could also not be the case. They could just show us the Eternals in a part of time before that actually happened. Maybe they're working up to that. Maybe even the Eternals are doing something else. Thanos comes to Earth and they're about to intervene, but that's when Sprite actually makes that happen, and they'll end it like that. That would be an insane ending to an Eternals movie. I would die if that happened, actually. That would be super cool for the ending of that first movie, but we'll get there when we get there. I still believe that Druig is meant to be the first main antagonist for that movie. So the movie is said to span 1,000,000 years, or it could potentially do that, and it could be used to see the origins of these characters, which I personally love, but it could also set up some other characters as well. Especially now that we have Fox properties, I would actually really love a little shout out or a little, tiny nod to Apocalypse. And I know if your view on Apocalypse is kind of trash because X-Men Apocalypse with Fox, trust me, if they do Apocalypse in the MCU, he will not look like Ivan Ooze like they made him look like at Fox. I'm talking they'll use the motion capture that they used for Thanos and the Hulk, and it will make him look like an absolute beast. If you don't know, Apocalypse, first mutant, used celestial technology to enhance his power to just insane degrees, and I think the MCU will make him not only look right, but will do him justice. Thor is like 1,500 years old. He, as well as Odin and Loki, have visited Earth before, so maybe there could be an appearance there or a mention of him too, but those are honestly just long shots. I would like to see him though. I think they'll focus more on these characters and not trying to bring too much to the table, especially with characters like these. I think they'll take the Guardians approach. They kind of just contained that story, and then after it did awesomely, they obviously brought them in and connected everything. I believe there's been some casting for the Eternals actually. I heard that Millie Bobby Brown was gonna play Piper, the female version of Sprite, or she was rumored to be. I hear this actor Richard Madden, who is in Game of Thrones, is supposed to be playing Icarus. Kumail, who most of you guys might know from Silicon Valley, was cast in an unspecified role, but I'm pretty sure he's gonna be playing Makari. And Angelina Jolie is actually tied to the movie as well, and if not Deena, I can totally see her playing Cersei. And as far as other even crazier cameos, guys, Jim Starlin, the creator of Thanos, has been talking about that he's heard that Thanos is definitely coming back. I don't know in what capacity, but maybe they'll show a baby Thanos or a child Thanos. And as well, in the movie, I think it is confirmed that his brother, at least Eros, the other Eternal, is set to be in this movie. And I really can't wait for Eros to be interjected into this, because he is the brother of Thanos. And I think just that dynamic, that kind of familial dynamic that Thanos has. I mean, the only family he kind of acknowledges is Gamora, and she's not even blood related. But anyway, guys, I hope I went over everything. That's all I can think of right now. I'll try to read more on it, and if I have anything to add in the future, I'll make another video. But I hope I explained the gist of everything. If I missed anything or if I got anything wrong, please let me know. I am very hyped for the Eternals movie, guys. As you know, I love weird Marvel movies, or weird movies in general. I love cosmic movies. I'm finally gonna get to see the Celestials, and I am so damn excited for that. So yeah, if you liked the video, leave me a thumbs up, comment down below, and if you want, subscribe. I always appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.